The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, The Man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are continuing with our reviews of the player cards in the Scarlet Keys Investigator expansion. This time around, we're going to take a look at the Rogue Customizable cards. We are going to discuss Damning Testimony, Friends in Low Places, and Honed Instinct. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Before we get started, a quick reminder of how we rate cards here on The Whisper in Darkness. The best of the best get an Elder Sign, while the worst of the worst get an Auto Fail, and the cards in between get a +1, 0, or Elder Thing respectively. Cards that you build around or cards that are good in one particular deck get a Bless token, while cards that we believe are destined to end up on the list of taboos or are simply bad for the big game get a Curse token. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. You all rock. If you'd like to be amazing like these people and support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Special thanks to Cole Monroe Chitty, Nicole Fiscus, and Nate Lost in Time and Space for their contributions to the channel. I couldn't do it without you. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome back, everyone, to our reviews of the player cards in the Scarlet Keys Investigator expansion. We are making our way through the customizable cards in the box. Just a quick reminder that we are not giving these cards ratings due to the various abilities that they can have. We are going to take a look at the rogue cards. The first one is Damning Testimony. It's a 4-cost asset with an intellect skill icon, item, and illicit trait. Customizable, uses 3 evidence. As an action, exhaust Damning Testimony and choose an enemy at any location. Investigate your location. If you succeed, you may spend 1 evidence to discover 1 additional clue at the chosen enemy's location, and it takes up a hand slot. Damning Testimony comes with 6 customizations. For 1 XP, you can get Search Warrant. While investigating using Damning Testimony, you may ignore any effect or keyword on the investigated location that would trigger. That might be helpful for the haunted locations in the Circle Undone. For 2 XP, you get Fabricated Evidence. Damning Testimony enters play with 2 additional evidence. Blackmail for 2 XP gets you +2 intellect while investigating using Damning Testimony. For 3 XP, you can pick up Extort. When you successfully investigate using Damning Testimony, you may spend 1 evidence to automatically evade the chosen enemy. For 3 XP, you can Surveil. You may use Damning Testimony's ability to investigate the chosen enemy's location instead of your location. And finally, for 4 XP, you can Expose. When you successfully investigate using Damning Testimony, you may spend X evidence to discard the chosen enemy. If it is non-elite, X is that enemy's remaining health. What do you think about Damning Testimony, Matastrophic?
So, first of all, how the hell is this illicit? It's evidence at a trial. This is like the law. This is like the least illicit thing that like you could have. Is like, this is it. This is holy. This is sacred. This is testimony, and it's used to like convict someone. How is this illicit? You tell me.
Maybe it's from an informant, like a gang informant.
Yeah, but it's still legal. It's still legal. It's very legal. It's like a legal document. How is this damning? And obviously, it's because it's an item that takes up your hand slot. Either A, it's those papers that are sitting in the front, or you need a hand slot to be able to go objection. Like it's one of those two. So the testimony is the papers, but it's a legal document.
Can you use act of desperation to throw the testimony at somebody?
Oh, absolutely, and you'd get 4 resources for doing that. That's more than a gun. Yeah, it hurts. It hurts as much as a gun, unless you're throwing the glasses at somebody. Or maybe you have to be wearing the glasses in order to unleash the testimony, because you gotta take your glasses like an anime character, and you have to go like this, and then you throw the evidence at the enemy. Maybe that's how it works. Anyways, the card itself, though, there is a text box in here. I just in case you forgot, there is a text box beyond the image. So I immediately want to compare this to a card that I've played a lot, and that's Fingerprint Kit. So Fingerprint Kit is cost 4, takes a hand slot, also an item. And that one exhausts, you investigate at +1, and if you succeed, you discover 2 clues instead of 1, and it costs you a supply to do it. So Damning Testimony, you don't get a bonus. You just investigate normally. There has to be an enemy on the board, okay? There has to be an enemy on the board, and you provoke attacks of opportunity from that enemy. Kind of awful. So as a result, I'm like, I see this as like just fingerprint kit number 3 and number 4, like kind of out of the gate. So not that great, I think. I'd much rather play like lockpicks or something. I mean, it is nice that you can use this to get additional clues. That's pretty cool. I admit that. I wish it had like a bonus or something, to get it up to fingerprint kit. But then you go into the upgrades, and I think the problem I have with the upgrades is that you got extort and you've got surveil and you've got expose. So what you end up doing there is you spend evidence to automatically evade enemies or surveil, which I think is kind of the worst one because you spend 3 XP and you like might lower the shroud of the location, like maybe. It's not worth XP in my opinion. I mean, you just see how popular In the Know is as a card. Yeah, that one's a staple. And then you've got like expose. These are like kind of high cost XP wise, but the problem I have with those is that you spend evidence that could have been used to get additional clues, and you're using them to do things that like is not worth spending clues for. Like extort basically says spend a clue to evade that enemy. Like, would you do that?
Probably not, no.
Yeah, exactly. Then expose. Would you spend 3 clues to discard an enemy from the board?
No. Expose was the one that
Exactly.
really was, I'm like,
Yeah.
there's no way I would ever pick up Expose. It's just way too
Yeah,
expensive
exactly.
for what it is.
I think the best thing about damning testimony is the ability to accelerate your clue gaining. Okay, but the thing is, like, you got the extra thing involving an enemy, and it's just like, okay, just stick with fingerprint kit or stick with I don't know, anything else that gives you bonus clues. I mean, fabricated evidence is not so bad because it's kind of like you're spending 2 XP to have 2 copies of card that could get you 5 bonus clues. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. And then like blackmail is pretty classic, +2. I'm not gonna lie, is not bad. Search warrant it's nice to have because of things like because of things like the TCU locations, the haunted locations. So like those top 3 are pretty good. I wouldn't even bother with honestly the evades. What I really wish they did is they had one that was like one checkbox and let you just not take attacks of opportunity, because it already has to be an enemy on the board anyway. So at that point, like half the time, the enemy is going to be engaged with you, and you can't avoid attacks of opportunity. None of the checkboxes let you do that, which is like kind of lame. I think. Like, I wish at least extort let you avoid attacks of opportunity, but it doesn't. Yeah, which is like really too bad.
Yeah, this card is a little bit awkward in solo, primarily because you have to discover that additional clue with the chosen enemy's location. So typically in solo, if there's an enemy at another location besides you, it's probably something like an Acolyte or the Wizard of the Order, and that location hasn't been revealed, so there are no clues there anyway. So
yeah, exactly.
So you've either drawn an enemy and then left that location, and then you can go back. You're reluctant to go back there, so you're sort of scooping the clues in a reverse order than what you would typically do, which I don't know. I mean, I can see definite situations where this would be handy. Like I always come back to like before the Black Throne, where you're often having to move quicker than you'd like, so you're leaving clues behind, and so having this and being able to grab the clues after you move is helpful. But for the most part in solo, I just don't see myself triggering this all that often. There is a case if you're playing somebody like Trish where extort could come in handy simply because of her weakness. If she evades her weakness, it automatically disappears. So if you're playing
just
Trish,
play breaking and entering. Just play breaking and entering.
Yeah, extort might be worthwhile, but I mean, again, I haven't played enough of Trish to know that whether this is worthwhile or not. Yeah, this one kind of just left me. I'm like, it gets you clues, which is good. It's just a matter of, I think I'd probably need to play this in multiplayer to make sure I'm getting the clues. Yeah. And I agree. Like, search warrant is nice for those odd situations when you're investigating a terrible location, like in TCU, where a lot of those haunted effects can be just awful. So being able to ignore that would be nice. getting extra clues with fabricated evidence is good, and then +2 investigating is nice with damning testimony. And after that, I just don't really see myself playing it. I mean, I could see extort maybe if you were, say, I investigate my location, I grab a clue there, I use extort to evade the enemy next door to me, like the acolyte, then I move in there, and then I'm able to investigate there again. I could see that being helpful, but am I going to spend 3 XP on that? I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like lockpicks like kind of does this thing's job better. Like just play lockpicks. I mean, it takes up a hand slot, so you're already juggling with like guns and this and your lockpicks. And it just seems like a lot of effort. And to be honest, I think a lot of what this card does, I think breaking and entering level 2 especially just kind of eclipses it. Because breaking and entering level 2 lets you evade enemies and discover clues without provoking attacks of opportunity. And if you succeed by 3 on breaking and entering level 2, you can do it over and over. So if you want if you want to take care of enemies, just do that. I think what this thing can do that can't do is discover multiple clues. So if you're already like a high intellect rogue and you're like the primary clue getter, then probably this with fabricated evidence and you're probably in good shape. You know, if like, and you're just using it to like get lots of clues, I think would be the way to go.
Yeah, I do like the additional clue. I think when I was looking at this on Arkham DB, most of the decks that were using this were Trish Scarborough decks, probably because of Extort's ability. But
it doesn't avoid attacks of opportunity.
Yeah, I didn't come up with a deck for this one. It seems like if you're a high intellect rogue, might be worth a look for the extra clues.
Yeah, like I'm envisioning Monterey Jack.
Well, but Monterey can't really upgrade this, can he?
Exactly. Monterey Jack at 0 XP before he gets lots of secret cards.
What about Finn?
Oh yeah, Finn has 4 intellect. Absolutely. Yeah, I can see Finn. Yeah, this would work with Finn. It means that he doesn't have to play fingerprint kits. He can use this to accelerate his clues. You know, and then over time he can replace this with lockpicks. You know, yeah, I can see that working.
So if you are looking for a way of grabbing some additional clues, take a look at Damning Testimony. The next Rogue customizable card is Friends in Low Places. It is a free event with an Intellect and Agility skill icon favor trait customizable. When you purchase Friends in Low Places, choose and record a trait on its upgrade sheet. Look at the top 6 cards of your deck for each looked at card with the chosen traits. You may spend 1 resource to add that card to your hand. Shuffle the remaining cards into your deck. Now, Friends in Low Places has 7 customizations. It has a nice little slot where you can pick a trait. There are dozens and dozens of traits in the game. Some of them, like item, are very, very common. Others, like Witch House, are not. So choose accordingly. For 1 XP, you can pick up Helpful. When you play Friends in Low Places, you may choose another investigator at your location to resolve its effect. For 2 XP, you can get Versatile. Choose another trait. When you play Friends in Low Places, you may choose one of the looked at cards with both chosen traits to add to your hand without spending 1 resource. For 2 XP, Bolstering, each card added to your hand by Friends in Low Places gains a wild skill icon until the end of the phase. I think I'm bound to forget this one, especially if I ended up drawing multiple cards with this card.
Yeah, plus it's phase. Oh yeah, and then you gotta keep track of which ones in your hand have the extra, right?
Yeah. This one I'd be bound to forget that. 2 XP, you can get Clever. Instead of shuffling the remaining cards into your deck, you may place each of them on top of your deck in any order. For 2 XP, you can get Prompt. Friends in Low Places gains Fast and play during any free triggered ability window. There are 2 3 XP options. The first is Experienced. Increase the number of cards looked at by 3, so for a total of 9. And finally, there is Swift. You may play one of the cards added to your hand, paying its cost. Now, way back in the Path to Carcosa cycle, the Seekers got No Stone Unturned, which is basically this card. But it works on all cards, not just the card with the chosen trait. And you don't have to pay resources for No Stone Unturned either, but you only get one card. This one gives you the option of spending 1 resource per card. No Stone Unturned, I believe, costs 2 XP or 2 resources. So if you were to use a very common trait like Item and spend 2 resources, you're basically getting 2 cards, where No Stone Unturned would get you 1. And then you can spend a whole bunch of XP on this thing if you wish to expand the number of cards you get to look at or pick another trait. I didn't actually look too much into how many cards have multiple traits that you would actually pick the 2 so you wouldn't have to spend the resource. I feel like Item and Illicit might be a good choice for rogues.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's where they're going with this. That's what they want you to do.
You'd be able to play, pay 2 XP for Versatile, choose Illicit and Item, and then get a few extra cards off of that without having to pay for them. That would be nice. I'm not entirely sure how helpful would be unless you chose a really generic trait like Item, because usually we've seen this in other cards as well, where it's sort of like other players can trigger things that probably aren't in their deck if you haven't done it that way. What do you think about this one?
So I actually thought about this for quite a bit, and one thing I did notice is that I think Item is what your brain initially wants to go to, but I think that's the red herring, because Item I think is handled very well by Backpack level 2 from Return to the Forgotten Age, which is like honestly one of the best card draw cards in the game, because you can just jam items onto your Backpack level 2 and you're in good shape. I don't think this quite gets up to the level of Backpack level 2 for items. On the other hand, what I think this is great for is it lets you slam out a lot of resources to get innate skill cards. I think there's something there. Now, because there are a lot of innate skill cards. They're not all rogue. A lot of them are survivor. Hint, hint, Preston. And I think that's where you want to go. Is I think you can do things with skill cards, because then it's like, all right, I can draw like 4 skill cards, and then I'm not overloading my hand because these skill cards don't require an action each to play. I'm like, all right, I think we got something there. And so the idea is you use Friends in Low Places to like load up your hand with skill cards that you can just trickle out as time goes on without having to commit those future play actions to make use of them. I think that's where we're going with this. Also, I think Innate also works with Helpful, because your friend probably may or may not have a lot of innate skill cards or practiced, and either of those are probably pretty good. And there you go. You can like spend a bunch of money and load up. Versatile's interesting because you can just do 2 traits worth of cards, and I wouldn't even worry about the looked at cards with the both chosen traits. I feel like you can tunnel vision on that. But I think the way to go with that is you look at 6 cards, or 9 if you have experienced, and just spend a bunch of money and just load up a whole hand. So I think this is like rogue. I wouldn't say cryptic research, but this is rogue like super preposterous sketches, if that makes sense. Where you like grab a bunch of cards off the top of your deck. You don't have to worry about drawing weaknesses. So it's like, yeah, there you go. I will also say though that I think prompt is going to get tabooed. I just know it. Fast draw is broken, and someone's going to break it. And you remember how Black Market got tabooed because fast draw is broken. Prompt's going to get tabooed. I just know it.
Card draw is good, and this gives you filtered draw, especially if you're using something like experience to look at the top 9 cards. You've built your deck in such a way that you know which trait you're looking for. There's probably enough cards in your deck with said trait to grab them. You just need the money, and that's something that rogues are generally pretty good at, especially if you're playing Preston or Jenny or somebody who has money rolling in on a pretty steady stream. So a lot of the downsides of this, or perceived downsides of this card, really aren't downsides at all. So it's nice that you can tailor it to what you need. And I was just using Item as, I think it's probably the most common trait in the game, but there are certainly others, like you say, like Innate, or I think I was looking at, I was thinking about like Talent as well, might be.
Oh yeah, using it as a
worthwhile.
talent searcher. That's not a bad idea actually, because because you can use talent to grab the 3 class talents from Edge of the Earth.
The composers.
Yeah, like Oh, not the composures. No, the 3 class talents like Crafty and
Right.
Brawler and
Right.
Prophetic.
Yeah.
Yeah, because those things are really good, but the problem with those is that you have to like dig and find your talent, and there's no real way to do that until now. So like, I think there's something there where you use this as a way to like dig 9 cards deep to look for something really important like a talent. And then your friend, you spend 1 XP and then, your friend at the table might have some talents that they really like and you can say, hey, here, find your talents. There you go. You're in a good place there. I think the way to look at this is to not tunnel vision on what they're trying to get you to do, and that's name talent, name item, and elicit. I think if you just break away from that, I think there's a lot you can do there. And then I think you need to resist the urge to use prompt because that's broken and it's going to get tabooed.
Yeah. Yeah. The more we talk about this one, the more I like it. I mean, I already liked it because of the draw, and it's nice that rogues are getting something like this. It's nice that it's level 0, so off-class rogues who may not necessarily have access to seeker cards now have pseudo access to a card like No Stone Unturned that they can use, and I'm all in favor of that. So
Yeah.
again, I think we've been sort of talking about decks that we see these in, but I think this one is generally good enough that it can fit in a wide variety of rogue and off-class rogue decks without too much trouble. It's also nice that a lot of the, like, besides experienced and swift, all of the XP spends are 2 XP. So you can pick you can pick basically 2 of the 2 XP ones, and you're still coming under that 2 XP cap for off-class rogues, which getting
like Leo.
Yeah.
Oh, you can do Leo and you can name ally. Oh, there you go. We did it, Cameron.
So
yep.
Leo's a good option. I mean, Skids could use this as well. I mean, I think pretty much any rogue can get some pretty good value out of this, just depending on how you build your deck. You don't really need to expend a lot of experience. I would probably not spend my experience on bolstering simply because I would forget about it.
You're gonna forget. Yeah, it's true.
And I don't know, clever, stacking cards on the top of your deck, that could come in handy, but I think most of the time it's just like, I'll just shuffle my deck and I'll probably get that card back sooner than later. So
keep in mind with clever, it's like, okay, so the cards that you're putting back on top of your deck are either ones that are not the trait that you want, or they're cards that you're not willing to spend 1 resource on. So do you really want them on top of your deck?
Yeah.
Probably not.
The only reason I'd probably want clever was, like, say if I drew my lock picks and I didn't have a lock picks, then I'd be like, okay, I kind of want the lock picks sooner than later, but I think that's sort of just the price you pay for playing a card, even just like, vanilla No Stone Unturned, right? It's like you get to look at the top 6. There's probably more than 1 card in there you want, but you're going to have to just pick one and shuffle the rest. So
at least clever lets you choose between, like, if you find cards and you want to keep them on top, then you can. But if they're garbage, you can just shuffle your deck and you're fine. Yeah, so at least it does that.
So Friends in Low Places is a keeper?
I'd say so. Generally useful, just don't play prompt because it's broken.
The final rogue customizable card is Honed Instinct. It's a 1-cost event with an agility skill icon. Customizable, fast, play only after one of the following conditions is met. The agenda or act advances, or you succeed at a skill test by 3 or more. Immediately take an action as if it were your turn, max once per round. Honed Instinct comes with 8 customizations. Most of those customizations are simply adding different conditions, all for 1 XP. I'm just going to run through them quickly. You take damage or horror. A location enters play or is revealed. An enemy engages you. A treachery enters your threat area. You play an asset. So all of those cost 1 XP. For 2 XP, you can get Sharpened Talent during the action granted by Honed Instinct. You get +2 to each of your skills. For 3 XP, you can get Impulse Control. You may include up to 3 copies of Honed Instinct in your deck. Honed Instinct gets -1 cost. So it kind of becomes a... what were those cards called again?
Myriad.
Myriad cards.
Yeah.
And for a whopping 5 XP, you can get Force of Habit. When you play Honed Instinct, you may take 2 actions instead of one at a time, then remove it from the game. So we received Swift Reflexes back in the Wages of Sin, which is basically this card, except it costs 2 resources and has 2 agility skill icons and just gives you an extra action. You don't have to meet any condition. This one gives you 1, possibly 2 actions, but you have to meet a condition. Now, granted, those conditions are not particularly onerous, at least on the basic one. Agenda and Axe are going to advance eventually, so you're giving up some flexibility there. Or if you can succeed by 3, which, I mean, if you've got lockpicks in your deck, that's not that difficult to do.
It's happening
most of the time. So what do you think about Honed Instinct?
So I immediately wanted to compare it to Quick Thinking. So I'm like, all right, so this is kind of like Quick Thinking. You know, I'm kind of zeroing in on the you succeed on a skill test by 3 or more. So unlike Quick Thinking, you have to succeed by 3. You have to pay for it. You don't have to play the card until after you've hit the condition, which is kind of nice. But you lose the wild icon that Quick Thinking provides. So I'm already looking at this as like Quick Thinking number 3 and 4. And then I was like, okay, well at that point, if I'm in a deck where I want Quick Thinking 3 and 4, then Impulse Control seems pretty good. Just do Quick Thinking 3, 4, and 5 at that point, and it costs 0. I'm like, okay, that's not bad. This card seems fine. Like, it seems like it takes up a lot of space for what it does, given that we have Swift Reflexes and Quick Thinking already. And it's like, do I really want to devote 5 slots to giving myself spending an event to give myself an extra action? I admit, of the responses, I kind of like Killer Instinct. That seems useful. Enemy engages you, you either fight it or evade it or something. Like that seems pretty good. I also admit Muscle Memory is the one I'm kind of staring at as well, because it kind of pays you back the play, having to spend a play action to do a thing, because play actions can really tax you. And then it's like, all right, well, I got Muscle Memory. I can like get the play action back and use it on something else. Like that seems fine. But like, yeah, this card is okay. Like the fact that it costs 1 kind of kills it for me, I think, because I'd rather just play Quick Thinking instead. But then you've got Impulse Control, and it's like, all right, it's Quick Thinking 3, 4, and 5, and it seems all right. Yeah, not a big fan of it. It seems kind of blah. There you go. Roundabout way of saying this seems kind of blah.
Yeah, this card seems as though the designers were sort of tinkering in the space where Quick Thinking and Swift Reflexes already reside. I know some people were, I mean, Quick Thinking is obviously very, very popular in Rogue decks and has been since it was released in Undimensioned and Unseen. Quick Reflexes hasn't seen quite as much play, I think largely because it costs 2 resources, sort of holds people back there. So they basically reduced the resource cost a little bit and tinkered around with sort of restricting when you could play it, and then of course gave you the option of spending XP to make it a little more free. And but yeah, I mean, it gives you an extra action. So how many of those effects do you need in your deck? That's something that you'll have to decide. Is like most rogue decks or decks that can take Quick Thinking will play 2 copies. So you're getting, as long as you can pass the skill test by, what is it, 2 or more, 3 or more? 3. As long as you can pass that skill test by 3 or more, you're getting an extra action there. And then, so really it's just like, what are you going to take out of your deck to put this in? Especially if you're going to go with 3 copies with Impulse Control. Yeah,
another thing that you, when you mentioned lockpicks, this kind of reminded me of is this set also gave us I'll Take That, which is potentially a hell of a lot of action compression, because you can do an investigate test and then use that to get a play action and a bunch of resource actions effectively. So you could really stack up the action compression using I'll Take That. So, I don't know, this seems like it kind of fits in a space where it's like, I don't know, just it's kind of meh. There are already cards out there that don't require an upgrade sheet that kind of do the same thing.
Yeah, it's a rogue ability that we have seen before. Offers a new take on it. I don't think it certainly doesn't take quick thinking or swift reflexes out of the card pool. So just gives you another option for how you want that effect. So that seems to be the case with the rogue cards or the customizable rogue cards anyway. Between
it's true.
Between friends in low places and this one, it seems like they were tinkering around the edges rather than something like the Raven Quill that we saw in the Secret card pool, where it's just like, holy hell, what's going on here?
What is going on here? It's true. It's true. Yeah, the rogue cards, they're very basic effects, and then you just have like a lot of ways to get there. Although you have damning testimony, but the ones that do weird things like deal with enemies are just kind of bad.
That's going to do it for our look at the rogue customizable cards in the box. Let us know what you think about them in the comments down below. We always love to hear from you. Any final thoughts, Matastrophic, on the rogue customizables?
Meh.
Yeah, I actually liked these ones after sort of weaving my way through. After Raven's Quill, these were a breath of fresh air simply because
it's true.
I understood what they did. And it was more like they do a thing and then most of the customizations are just like when you do the thing or sort of tweak how the thing happens, but they're not sort of adding brand new abilities, which seems to be the case with some of the other customizables.
Oh, like the what's it? The axe that can like make you a coffee and and do your homework and mow the lawn. Yeah.
So I mean, I can see playing these cards in decks and not. I guess one of the biggest issues I've had with the customizables is when I typically build my decks on Arkham DB, and so I'm looking at the card list and I'm like, oh, Honed Instinct, what does that do? And then I realize it's a customizable card, and then I'm going to actually have to click on the card and then go read the upgrade sheet to figure out what it does.
True.
And at least with the rogue cards, I know what it does, and I know that the customizations only sort of tweak that. They don't radically alter it to the point where I'm like, I have no idea what the card does anymore, which I can't say about some of the others, where I'm like, I look at a card like the Raven's Quill and I'm like, I have no idea what it does. I could go look it up, but why bother? And I just forget about it as part of deck building and move on. Where I think with especially like Friends in Low Places and Honed Instinct, I'm like, yeah, okay, Honed Instinct gives me extra actions. Friends gives me cards. I know what they do. I'll put them in my deck and worry about the customizations later, where some of the others aren't quite as straightforward.
Yeah, I can see myself running Friends in Low Places. Just slam a bunch of money out there, draw some cards.
That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromlang@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromlang. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.